All right. So hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on today's episode of The Outlet, Lunch and Learn with SheTek's Extraordinary Women. Today's episode is the 6th episode of our ongoing SheTek webinar series. Thank you so much to anyone who's been a part of our previous episodes of The Outlet. We really, truly could not have reached this milestone without you and your participation and community engagement. So thank you all so much for being a part of this. It's great to be plugged in with you. I'm Meg Virag, Program Coordinator and Community Manager at SheTek, and I'll be your host today. We'll be recording today's webinar, and we'll post a link to the recording on the SheTek Power community as soon as it's available. You can also follow us on our YouTube channel, SheTek Global, where all our videos are posted, including past episodes of The Outlet and the recent SheTek virtual conference. Right now, all of our attendees are muted by default, and we'll have time for a Q&A with today's guests after our interview. Please submit all the questions in the Q&A or the chat box as they come to mind. We'll let you know that it's been received, and then we'll get those questions answered by the end of today's session. Today's episode of The Outlet is brought to you by SheTek, an initiative of PamTen Inc. dedicated to increasing the number of women in the tech staffing pipeline. Today's episode is a special interactive virtual workshop titled Bold, Not Bossy, Confident, Not Cocky, How to Be an Assertive Woman Leader. We're talking to two extraordinary women today, our own Chaya Pamula, SheTek founder and PamTen president and CEO, and Pattie Grimm, renowned author, speaker, and trainer coach. Chaya Pamula is SheTek's founder and also the co-founder, CEO. Oop, too far. There we go. All right. Chaya Pamula is SheTek's co-founder and also the co-founder, CEO, and president of PamTen Inc. I got mixed up. Co-founder, president, and CEO of PamTen Inc., one of our sponsors here on The Outlet. PamTen is an award-winning global IT services and staffing organization, conceptualizing innovative products and solutions for its clients, overseeing them from development to implementation. Through her work leading PamTen, Chaya saw for herself the challenges of hiring women in the tech field. Though jobs were available, Chaya didn't see many applications from women in tech. Chaya went on to found SheTek to increase the number of women in the tech staffing pipeline. Chaya also combined her business acumen and passion for charity to found Sofkin. You can find them at sofkin.org, a nonprofit organization that operates in the United States and in India and creates loving and caring homes for over 100 children in need. Our guest, Pattie Grimm, has over 25 years of experience. Pattie is an empowerment expert for organizations, leaders, teams, and women. Pattie's presentations and interviews are empowering, educational, and interactive, and provide real-life skills that you can use in your workplace or your career today. Pattie worked as a senior leader for the Microsoft Enterprise team for 15 years, including 3 years running the Asia-Pacific region. She also worked at Johnson & Johnson Surgical Vision as the global head for performance and leadership effectiveness. Pattie was one of the youngest female vice presidents for a California bank as well. Pattie now runs her training and consulting company focused on educating and empowering women and girls to be the best that they can be. She is an author, a speaker, master trainer, podcast guest, coach, and women's advocate. Pattie was recognized as one of the top women leaders by the Executive Women's Association and Who's Who in Women's Leadership. She was recognized as one of the top women authors by Connected Women of Influence and was awarded the Top Women Leadership Award by the state of California. Pattie's book, Quiet Women Never Changed History, Be Strong, Stand Up, and Stand Out, with the subtitle, Let's Go Kick Some Glass, is available on Amazon in paperback and in Kindle. She is the former host of the popular weekly radio show, Women Kicking Glass, on OC Talk Radio. Pattie is a passionate woman leader who is dedicating her life to empowering women and girls to be the best that they can be in any endeavor that they choose. As an author, speaker, trainer, coach, podcast guest, and women's advocate, Pattie is a fantastic guest for us here at SheTek. Currently, Pattie lives in Rancho Mirage, California with her husband and her two pugs, Roxy and Mango. I just had to loop the pugs in because we all love hearing about pets over here. We're so glad that you could join us today on SheTek's The Outlet. I'm going to hand it over to Chaya now so that way we can get our conversation going. There we go. I just sent over a little thing for Pattie to start up her video, and I'm going to step off the camera.
There you go. Thanks, Meg. Hey, Patty, welcome.
Welcome. I'm trying to get my screen sharing to work. So, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Okay.
hear you. I hope everyone can hear you. That's
Okay.
awesome. So, thank you for joining us, Meg. Thank you for the introductions. So, I'm really, really excited for this discussion today, Patty. You obviously you have done a lot, and everything that Meg is reading about your bio. There are endless achievements, right? The list goes on.
It's
So.
actually embarrassing. I need to shorten that thing. I think my mother wrote that.
That's awesome. I think it's important to actually identify those, right? Because it becomes a motivation for others as well. It's an inspiration. So you've been very successful in your career as a business advocate, and also you've written a book that titled "Quiet Women Never Change History." And how to stand up for yourself and stand out. I really, really like this topic. I think it's so much needed in today's world, especially we're trying to promote more women into leadership, and obviously through SheTek we are looking at promoting women into
Yep.
technology industry.
Yep.
So I know
Yep.
that there is a lot that you can share with us today, but let's talk about your journey. Tell us about your background and how you became so passionate about supporting women and obviously SheTek.
Yeah. So, my journey with supporting and really being passionate about helping women be the best they can be, really in any endeavor they choose, goes back to my days in banking. And this was over 25 years ago. And I started hosting the first empowerment conference, although the time empowerment wasn't a word back 25 years ago. But I started these conferences, and this was back in the days when banks weren't open on Saturdays. So I literally would host these conferences for women, and I would bus people in from all over the state of California. We'd have an all-day Saturday conference. We'd have motivational speakers and prizes and workshops and things about dress for success and how to be confident and speak up. And so it really goes way back to then. And then in my time at Microsoft, I was always part of the Women's in Technology group. I spoke at all the conferences, and I've really been passionate about this because we've come a long way, but we have a really, really long ways to go. I mean, women's pay has only gone up 1% in the last decade. We're still underrepresented, underserved, and really underpaid in all aspects. And so we really do still need to stop kissing that glass ceiling and really kick it. And I really came across sort of this group by accident as I saw Chaya present as a part of a panel, and I was so inspired by her and the work she was doing. I thought, I need to figure out more about this group and get involved in it, because you really are the CEO of your life. I mean, think about yourself as you incorporated, that you have a brand to sell, you have skills and talents and things that are going to make you successful. So I want you to hire, fire, promote accordingly, as if you're the CEO of your life, because you are. You want to control your own destiny, because you don't want to give that power to anyone else. And so I've really been passionate about this for a long time. And I do a lot of podcast interviews and things. I speak quite a bit on a number of different things, but it's really all about being the empowered you. So how about we get started? We have some questions kind of throughout that Chai is going to be asking me questions, and we're going to kind of go through some content, and then we'll have time for Q&A as well. And I'm also going to be using the chat box quite a bit. And so here's the first kind of quick chat box activity just to get your fingers working this morning. So tell me, are you East Coast, West Coast, Southern US, Central? And you can type in the chat box where you're located. Um, So East Coast for me, West Coast, I'm West Coast, so I'm in Palm Springs, California. So East Coast, quite a few folks from different areas. All right, so people are seeing my slides, right? So things are going pretty well in terms of seeing the slides. So here's what we're going to talk about today. And as I said, there's going to be questions throughout that we're going to pause and ask a question and bring in some interactivity into this. We're going to have these chat box activities throughout. We're going to talk about the women's dilemma and some of the biases that are out there that still exist against women. We're going to talk about the science behind confidence, talk about some confidence building principles and a few exercises. We're going to talk about the difference between being assertive and aggressive, and being bold, not bossy, and confident, not cocky, because It seems to apply to women more than men, that we come up with the term that people say, well, she's a bossy leader. Well, we're going to talk about how you can walk that tightrope with that fine line, be the confident, strong, empowered woman leader you are without getting into the TOO zone, the TOO zone, where you're too aggressive. And so we'll talk about that. And we'll end on talking and give you some tips about leading others, because it's all about being a great leader. You'll talk about planning your one things. And I don't know about you, but I want to thrive today. I don't want to just survive. I want to be someone that just really rocks this world and makes a difference. That's been so important to me back to the time I was a little girl. And I was teaching classes back then to all my friends and family and holding workshops. Even when I was a little 6, 7, 8-year-old girl, I was still wanting to be this person that made a difference in the world. And I think many of us are looking to do that. So you're in the right place if, and I'm going to have you put the number in the chat box of which one of these or how many of these apply to you. You're in the right place if you want to go further at work and life. So if that applies to you, put a 1 in the chat box. If you want to create an unshakable platform to help you achieve your goals, because that confidence is so important in business today, it's actually more important than your competence. So put a 2 if that one applies to you. And if more than one can apply. If you want to make a radical change in your confidence level, so you have that ability to walk into a room and just own it, right? Even if you're an introvert, I'm going to talk about introverts specifically today. If you called Bossy more than once, I could probably put a dozen 4s in here. If someone says, you got your kind of bossy today. I had an assistant that used to work for me, or worked with me. She more than managed me than I managed her. So she was my assistant, but she worked with me. We worked side by side. And there were days she would come up to me and say, you know, Patty, I think you left Grace at home today, because I was being too direct in things I was doing. Okay, also, you want to be a stronger, more confident woman leader. And I'm going to say this a couple of times. I want to get to a point where we just say she is a great leader, and we no longer have to say she is a great woman leader. She is just a great leader. And finally, you want to change the way you see yourself and the way the world sees you. So if those apply to you, all of the above, I love it. Thank you. So these are things we all want to work on in life. I also have a riddle for you. Okay, I have a riddle for you. And the riddle goes like this. It's a very short, it's not super funny, or it's kind of even a little bit sad. And so I'm going to talk to you introverts, I promise today. Here's the riddle. So a father and son are traveling to go to their favorite baseball game. And on the way to the game, they get into a terrible accident and the father passes away. They take the little boy to the hospital. And as they're in the hospital, the surgeon walks up and the surgeon says, I can't operate on this child. This is my child. So my question for you is, who was the surgeon? Who was the surgeon? I can't operate on this child because this child, I'm this child, the kid's mom, the mother. Awesome, awesome. Do you know that only 14% of recent college graduates got this riddle correct? They said it was another father. They said it was a priest. They said it was the person that died was a priest, not necessary. So only 14% of recent college students got this right. And that's because of unconscious bias and this dilemma of many women leaders. And so we're going to talk about this for a minute. So this is a point where we can start talking about this, Chaya.
Yeah. So when I looked at it, by the way, great slides. They kind of summarize a lot of scenarios that women go through. And I also said like all of the above, right? That's what it is. So talking about unconscious bias, I actually went through these experiences in my life, right? So we fight with this unconscious bias in our lives. Because of our background, cultural background, values and beliefs, or the way we are brought up and our minds are tuned, we form these impressions that are ingrained into our system. It's so hard to get them out. So it's either, it's not necessarily for a specific gender. It could be women against women or, men against women. It could be anything when it comes to unconscious bias. But I do believe that the success for women comes more faster if another woman, successful woman, kind of gives the hand and helps the woman to come up, right? And
Yeah.
not have any bias. So I'm really very intrigued by this one. So I want to understand how this really, what your thoughts are around this unconscious bias and how do people try to get out of that?
Yeah, and when you look at the iceberg image, right? What we have in our conscious mind is, and I don't, the 10%, 90%, it could be 80, 20, but really the things that we think about, our conscious mind, our critical thinking, our memory or willpower, those kinds of things. But there's so much below that, exactly like you said. It's our emotions, our beliefs, how we were raised, our imagination, it's our past experience, and all these come into this unconscious bias. And I kind of put a few of the common ones up here, but there are up to 40 unconscious biases that have been documented through brain research and various research by the Neuro Leadership Institute. You may have an affinity bias because somebody looks like you, sounds like you, talks like you. Somebody could have gone to the same school that you went to. UCLA in California versus SC, or Harvard versus Princeton, or wherever you happen to go to school. You can have a bias just because you went to the same school and you had a common experience. There's the halo effect of, you see somebody and you think they're great and you don't see the downsides when they do things wrong. But there's also the horned effect when we view people negatively, like so many women leaders are seen as being negative or putting other women down. There's perfectionists. And then when something confirms your bias, when you say, oh, I really click with this person because we have a similar style, even not even a race or gender or age or any of those things, we have a similar style and we can talk easily to each other, that confirms that bias of, oh, you're like me. And I always tell people that, well, first thing is to be aware that we all have biases and they're just there. We're aware of them. And then try and be so aware of them that when you're communicating with people, you try and put those biases aside. But it's interesting, when a woman isn't afraid to display her feelings or beliefs, she can be labeled as emotional. But when a man displays that same emotion, that same passion, and shows his feelings, it's seen as being passionate. And so that's sometimes that fine line that I think women really walk, in being aware of that and try not to be somebody else, but to truly be your best self. So unconscious bias are things we can't see in ourselves, but we can see it in other people. And so having a friend or colleague that can help you, like you said, that lifts you up, that helps be a sponsor for you. We don't want to believe we're biased, but we are. And women seem to be judged more harshly when we do get passionate, or maybe we get a little angry, or something seems to happen and it seems to be we have less leeway in that situation. The interesting thing is, research shows that girls as young as 10 stop raising their hands in class because they don't want to be seen as too smart, because they want to be able to fit in. And women in meetings are less likely to speak up. And that's part of confidence as well. So, we're told to lean in, but when we do, sometimes we experience that backlash. And never apologize. Stop saying I'm sorry, or I'm only, or I'm just, or shoulding yourself. If you're an introvert, celebrate that. I've got a link later on about introverts. There's a video that I want you all to go watch about being an introvert that I think you'll find fascinating. But also, we have this double bind paradox that goes on top of the bias that many people feel, is that as men rise up the ranks, they tend to increase their likability. As women gain power, their likability tends to go down. And that's when other women may start to tear someone down, which is absolutely a cardinal sin. When we negotiate for other people, we're perceived as really positively, like I'm negotiating something for my team. But when we negotiate for ourselves, sometimes we're seen as being more selfish. It's just very, very interesting, the data that's out there. And there's a classic Harvard business case about Heidi and Howard. And in this very recent, in the last 5 years business case, the students were given 2 case studies to read. One was about Heidi, one was about Howard. In the case of Howard, when people were asked to describe Howard, here's some of the words that came up about Howard. He was perceived as the boss, persuasive, dedicated, smooth, assertive, confident, strong, neat, team player. Heidi The facts in the case are exactly the same. The only thing that changed was the name or the gender. She was seen as bossy, or the B word that rhymes with itchy. She was seen as pushy, selfish, showy, aggressive, pushy, vain, and competitive. So just very interesting that this goes on. There's actually a Pantene commercial from the Philippines that visually shows this. I thought was sort of interesting. So what do you do? Well, so one of the things you want to do is you want to disrupt the biases and the status quo. You want to be your own self and say, I can be a confident, strong leader. But you can also be strong and caring. And we're going to talk about this in confidence and balancing being aggressive versus being assertive. You can speak up and speak out. And you will question yourselves and others. When you're in that hiring process and you're looking to add someone to the team, are you looking for someone who looks just like you, or are you looking for someone who's very different from you? And you can question it in others. When someone makes a comment that's inappropriate, do we say something, or do we just let it slide? These are the days we have to speak up. And yes, it's nice to be liked. We all want to be liked, but you also want to be a respected, strong leader. Someone that people say, wow, I really learned a lot from this individual. So I want to see this changing role model of leaders and just have this point where we can just say, she is a great leader, right? If you look at what's happening in the COVID crisis, the countries that are handling the COVID crisis the best are women. And they're strong, confident, empathetic, caring women. And I've been posting things on LinkedIn and Facebook about the woman from New Zealand quite a bit, because she's posted some amazing things, excuse me, that she's done. Excuse me for just 1 second. Recently, she just posted a comment that she was criticized for being too empathetic. And her response back is that being an empathetic leader is half of the job. It's half of the job. It's being that person that makes a difference. And so life is hard without worrying about what others are going to think or say about us. I want you to stand out and stand confident.
So this is interesting segue into my next question, actually. So it is really easy to tell people to be confident, right? So for example, I had many situations, but one of the most interesting situations I was in, working in a company where there were 5,000 employees. I was the only woman.
Yes.
Right? And I was in the middle management, and I used to sit in these meetings, and nobody would look at me. They don't even want to listen to what I had to say. They would not even give a pause even for me to raise my voice and say something. So I had to find my own tricks to really come through that situation. So people started to get used to having a woman in the room. And
yes.
Also, getting used to listening to a woman's voice. And I had to be very straight up sometimes to say what I wanted to say, because it was always like waiting for that moment for me to get that moment to say something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's I didn't have a mentor those days, right? I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have the resources. But I'm so glad that we have channels like SheTek and other women empowerment organizations, and people like you who are always passionately working towards empowering women. I think the most important thing is to have those resources and the tricks and of the trade to really overcome these situations and build your confidence. So it took me years to build my confidence. So I'm really, really interested in learning what is that you have in store to tell us about having confidence is important, but how do we get there?
Yeah, and I can tell you, there are times in my life, even today, when sometimes you're thinking, am I really confident enough? And I will tell you one of the things that really helps is being very prepared. So if you're going to walk into that meeting, ask for the agenda ahead of time. Do a little bit of research, have an opinion or something you want to share. And maybe you propose it by saying, have we thought about this? And being able to get your hand in there. There are times I've been in those rooms where I've had my hand up for 10 minutes before I finally get recognized, but I don't take my hand down.
Yes.
Right. And so we've all had those moments of lack of confidence, but I will tell you, there's a number of things that have really, really helped me. One is really having a growth mindset, and you can get the book Growth Mindset and read a whole bunch about this or watch YouTube videos on it. But really, I had to learn, and actually I was fortunate that I had a father and mother who believed in me. And my dad always told me I could do anything I wanted to do, and I could do it better than any boy. You know, if you just work hard, you can do anything you want to do. And so I really had to learn that I can do anything I put my mind to. I can learn it, I can figure it out. I won't be perfect at it at first, and that's okay, because that's part of learning. And when I get frustrated and something doesn't go well, I not only persevere, but I do this after action review I shared in the session I did a couple weeks ago or a month ago about when something goes wrong. When you go in and do that presentation, you're in that meeting, even a Zoom meeting today, is ask yourself some questions. You know, don't do the blame game. Don't ask why, you know, what happened is what you want to say. Why did this happen? What did I learn from it? And what would I do differently next time to create a different result? What could I do differently next time to create a different result? And I want to challenge myself. And that when I fail, I use that after action review. And when I succeed, I ask myself the same questions. What happened? Why did it happen? What did I learn from it? And what would I do again to achieve the same result? And so sometimes that's practicing, that's getting my information ahead of time, that's getting my confidence. But we're going to talk about some real practical things about confidence as well. And so increasing my confidence helped me develop a stronger self-belief and manage my fears and doubts. In our mind, it can't tell the difference between a fear and sometimes excitement, because the brain reacts the same way. It goes from all the frontal part of your brain where you're thinking logically to the back part of your brain, which is the fight and flight syndrome. And so managing that fear and self-doubt and using techniques that help you stay calm. You know, managing my, you know, being present in meetings by preparing and managing my own negative voice. And if I hear myself saying, I can't do this, I have to say, I can do this. I could do one thing. What is one thing I could do? And I've also started to learn to care less about what people think, you know, so I could stand out from the crowd and be the best self-assured version of me, because you can do it. You can increase your confidence. Now, some interesting things is that confidence counts because it's more important than your competence today. And most of that's because what we see matters first. So people first see us visually. And some of the science behind confidence is that in some cases for many years, they believed that people were either born confident or not. And some of that goes all the way back to the research of Plato and Carl Jung and Myers-Briggs type indicator that people are either more direct or indirect. If you're more direct, you're more likely to be extroverted, which is less about personality than where you get your energy. When you're an extrovert, you get your energy from people. And you talk fast and you talk loud, you use your hands. I'm an extreme extrovert in 90% of the cases. If you're an introvert, you're more indirect. And you get your energy by going inside, by thinking through things, by being able to give yourself time to prepare. You don't like to be asked to wing it. But the fact is, you can be nurtured and develop that confidence and be able to be that strong introvert that still stands out in the meeting. And so Susan Cain has a great video on the power of introverts. I encourage you, all the introverts, to go watch this. And she tells an incredible story about the fact the first time she went to camp, she packed a suitcase full of books, thinking it was going to be a camp where girls were going to sit around and read books all day and share their stories. Well, she gets to camp, and the camp counselor has them do some kind of silly cheer, like we are R-O-D-I-E, rowdy, rowdy. We are R-O-D-I-E, rowdy, rowdy. And forcing the girls to make it was spelled incorrectly on top of it. And making these trying to make these introverts into extroverts. Well, just embrace who you are, because you have a choice. And I ask you, and maybe you can put in the chat box, tell me a time when you felt confident. Tell me a time when you felt confident, and how did you feel? Okay, so let's see some chat box activities. Tell us sometimes you felt confident, and how did you feel when you were confident? And let's get some chat box activity going here. Because I want you to step into your full power when you realize that you don't need other people's approval to be a strong, confident woman leader. You need to be the best you, right? So you need to be the best you and be that confident. You know, you want to teach confidence to your kids because you want your kids to feel confident. Praise them for not just their accomplishments, praise them for who they are. I saw you were a great friend yesterday to Sally. Or I noticed the other day that you shared your toys with other children. Don't just compliment them on their grades. We get into the good girl syndrome. She's a good girl because she got good grades. She's a good girl because she plays well with others. She's a good girl, right? When I'm good at having networking, when I share my knowledge, when you share your knowledge, that confidence shows. So it's in you. You need to just let it out, right? I can feel the confidence in all of you. So I have this great picture of Meryl Streep from The Devil Wears Prada.
I love that
right?
movie. I really love that movie.
Yeah, who was a bossy boss, but she was also pretty bold, right?
Yes, yes. Again, it's an interesting thing. Just going back to the confidence, I just want to add one thing, Patty. One thing I used to do was that I would list down all my strengths, things that I appreciate about myself. When I made that list, it automatically gave me that confidence, right? So unless you really put it on the paper and keep it right on in front of your face, you don't even realize the amount of strengths and capabilities you have, right? That's one exercise that really helped me.
Yep, we've got a similar exercise in a few minutes on asking people to write down things you're good at, things you're proud of, things that you love. Keep an accomplishment file, please. Keep an accomplishment file. Every time you do something, you get a compliment from a customer, a boss, a coworker. Keep that in a file someplace, so you have that as evidence, and you also makes you feel better about yourself, right? So we're going to continue this talk about
confidence. So coming back to this question, right, about bold, not bossy, right? So with my experience, again, I've seen women who almost became like alpha males, right? So in a male-dominated place, they feel that they need to behave like a man to be prominently given that kind of respect and give that confidence. I always just think you can still be a woman and enjoy being a woman and still be that confident person and then get that respect and maintain your self-dignity. Also, you earlier said that there are women who are called with the B word because they are, very aggressive, and sometimes they're straight up on your face and telling you, I need this. They're very results-oriented, goal-oriented people, but they're not seen as the right bosses. So this is an interesting scenario that I would like to hear from you. What are some ways that women can be bold, but yet not bossy? And if they're not bossy, again, they're not seen or given that level of respect. So how do we deal with that?
So I'm going to continue on this confidence and go into a little bit of some of the research that comes out of Stanford and some other places, that women who are both seen as bold and powerful and empathetic, they keep that woman side of them. They don't try and be a man. I think sometimes when we're seen as bossy, we're trying to be that man. We're standing up and pounding our our fist on the table saying, we will do this my way. That's being bossy. But being powerful and body language is key to confidence and both power and empathy. Some amazing research that helps with your confidence. It's about changing perceptions, because confidence in a body language sense is displayed in height and space. So it's about showing status and power by holding your head straight, your ears over your shoulder on Zoom meetings. Super important. Before the Zoom meeting starts, do yourself a favor. Jump on your own private Zoom for 2 minutes. Take a look at your background. Take a look at your camera angle. And if need be, adjust your camera or do something to give you the same size and space as the other people. You don't want to be this little teeny person that's way back here, right? You want to be able to stand up and be confident. If you want to show empathy, you lean forward and you can kind of tilt your head slightly because you're listening. That's going to bring in that strength of the power pose and the empathy of leaning in and turning your head slightly. Men tend to nod their head when they agree with something. Women tend to nod their head all the time, even when we're not agreeing with somebody, which can send a confusing signal. So watch your head nods, right? I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's all proved in science. Hands tell a story. If you're trying to be empathetic, use open hands. If you're trying to be powerful, your hands are maybe more closer into your body, and maybe if you're standing, they're at your waist. You can use your hands to make a point, but don't keep pointing, because that goes from bold to bossy. And avoid the praying hands, right? Because it looks like, oh gosh, please get me out of this meeting. So those are a few tips and tricks about confidence and being bold. And I want you to do this confidence exercise. I want you to do it now in the chat box, but after this webinar, this discussion, I want you to do exactly what you said. I want you to go right at, I am good at. What I like about me is, I am proud of me for speaking up in that meeting. How did you get that confidence? I'm thankful for, I am grateful for, and I help others and others come to me. This will help build your confidence. And practice, right? Before every session, you will find me, even as we were on the waiting time, is because we all logged on a little bit early to make things were all working. I'm literally standing up in my office. I'm going to pull my chair back a second. And I'm standing up with my hands on my hips. And I'm putting my shoulders back, and I'm doing my deep breathing so that I can feel confident in how I'm going to be, how this session is going to go for us today. So I want you to do some of these things. What are you good at? What do you like about yourself? And keep this, put it on your computer so you can look at it. My favorite place, I did this as a marketing trick at Microsoft. If I was trying to roll out something new and I was trying to be kind of cute and funny about it, I would put signs in the bathrooms. So put your I'm good at, what I like about me, I'm proud of, I'm thankful for, put them on your bathroom mirror, because we all look at it when we brush our teeth at least twice a day, if not more often. Build your own confidence, because when you feel confident, it feels great. If somebody asks you something you're really good at doing, your confidence shows, right? So also just be aware of that body language and things. So if you want to put some things in the chat box, that would be great. So you have the power to be confident and bold. You want to picture yourself being successful. You want to use the power poses and rituals. I have a small rock, but before I walk on stage to do a presentation or a workshop, I pull this rock out of my purse and I literally hold it in my hand and say, you rock, girl. And I also play music when I'm doing live sessions. I have a series of powerful, strong women videos, the 10 top women songs, like This Girl is on Fire, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I am a fighter. All these songs and things that can build up your confidence. And then believe in your ability to improve and have that growth mindset. And then practice and really evaluate when things go well and don't go well. Your confidence is going to build over time. Your confidence is going to build over time. And also remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the acquired ability to move beyond fear. And so when you're afraid, that's a time to grow. That's a time to have the courage to try something new, to do something different. I often ask people, what would you do if you weren't afraid? What would you do if you weren't afraid? Right? Oops.
Yeah, I mean, Patty, looking at this confidence, right? Confidence again results into you being able to make your voice heard, and being able to expect things from others and be able to lead teams, because that is a quality that is required to do so. But oftentimes, even in my case, I start thinking about, am I assertive or aggressive at this point, right? So there is no right or wrong way. I feel sometimes you got to be aggressive and sometimes you can be assertive, but most times I would rather be assertive than aggressive. So what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so you don't want to be the woman from 101 Dalmatians. So it really, I think you said it perfectly. There's a very fine line between being aggressive and being a bulldozer, and being assertive in the middle kind of sweet spot, or being too passive and being a doormat. So being a team player is not the same thing as being a doormat and letting people roll over you. Being assertive is that fine balance between that. And there are times, I agree, there are times you may need to be aggressive. If someone's attacking you, you want to listen and try and hear what they're saying and come back to them. But if you become more passive, they're just going to continue to roll over you. So being assertive kind of is in that middle area. And so the difference between being assertive and aggressive is how your words and behaviors affect the rights and well-being of others. So if your intent in being aggressive is to get your point across, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't harm others or doesn't affect their rights or well-being, then you're probably in the okay zone, not in the to zone. But when you're going off to that extreme, that's when you're being aggressive. When you look up the two words in the dictionary, everything about aggression is about war and fighting and battle and win-lose. So when you're in that too aggressive mindset, you're in I'm going to win and you're going to lose. And that's not a good place to be. You don't want to be there very often. You may have to go there occasionally, but you don't want to be there very often. And so assertive communication is really expressing your thoughts and needs and feeling honestly while respecting the thoughts and needs and feelings of others. It's using that balance of grace and grit, right? So I talk about grace and grit quite a bit. And it really is having the ability to practice that emotional intelligence about being aware of who you are and your self-style and your strengths and areas for improvement, but also being aware of others' strengths and their areas and being able to have style flexibility. That means you lead and manage people based differently on the individual and the situation. You treat everybody fairly, but you may need to treat them slightly differently because of their own emotional intelligence and who they are. You offer ideas and support with facts, not feelings. So you back up your information with data. And one thing women need to learn to do is talk less and use less words. A man will make a statement of 10 words. A woman could take that same statement and make it 20, 30, 40 words, and I see you smiling. So we have to learn to make a statement and talk less, and then respect the feelings of others and be prepared to speak in at those meetings and learn to say no, because being a team player does not mean being a doormat. It's learning to say, no, I can't do that, but here's what I can do, and maybe offer an alternative.
Yeah, one of the tips one of my mentors gave me was that just because you have to say something you don't have to say, try to say things that would actually add value. That's where you gain a lot of credibility from the team.
Yeah.
That's why I was smiling, you can talk whatever. I also see in the chat box, one of our listeners who is also our member on our advisory board, Chitra Durai. She said, her confidence is CGH, courage to face any adversity. And she also talked about grace to forgive others, and then humility to stay grounded. So I really like that.
Oh, I love that. Oh, whoever said that, I may have to follow up with you on that. That is perfect. So it's courage, grace, and humility. And I think if you keep that in mind as a leader, you're going to go a really, really long way in life, which is actually a perfect transition into sort of our next topic.
Yeah. I've had several mentors in my life with everything that I do, different mentors. We actually had a topic on mentors and mentorship sponsorship in one of our outlet series. It's a very interesting topic. But all these mentors that you have, they also, the way you choose your mentors across the journey of your life, right? It depends on who your mentors are and how they can influence you. So did you have such mentors in your life that helped you to become a confident and assertive leader today?
I had some amazing mentors. I remember one woman, her name was Sherry, and it was after, she's an amazing mentor, and I'm going to talk about the power of men mentors as well. But we were after one of the big meetings you had on campus, and there's coffee cups and there's things and donuts and bagels and stuff all over the meeting room. I start to clean up the room. And literally on the back of the room, I heard, "Put the cups down." And I was, I think I dropped a coffee cup on the table. She says, you don't see the men doing that, right? So mentors help you and sponsors help you in so many ways. I had two incredible British gentlemen who wanted to be my mentors when I lived in Asia, when I was in Singapore. And they were incredible. And they always helped me in so many ways because they helped me take my presentation that was really long and really wordy and net it down to what's the story you want people to walk away with? What's the story you're trying to tell? And they really helped me in so many ways. And they helped me be a great leader, right? They helped me be the kind of person that I am today. And one of them walked me through this exercise. I'm going to have you all do it just right now. Is I want you to think about the worst boss you've ever worked for. And there's a real point to this exercise. What did they do in the chat box? How did you feel? And how did that impact on your performance? So the worst boss you ever worked for. We always talk about the great bosses and the great leaders, which I definitely would recommend you do and take things you admire about them. But also think about that worst boss. What did they do? How did you feel? And how did that impact on your performance? I learned more from this exercise, and it stuck with me for over 25 years because I remember that leader. And I jokingly say he was a paranoid schizophrenic with masochistic tendencies. This is a man that when I made vice president at the bank, and I was one of the youngest female vice presidents at a major California bank, when I made vice president, he walked by my office screaming the entire time, and my staff and everybody could hear, Grimm, you really blanked up this time, blah, 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 yelling, screaming, at me, pulls me into the office, grabs me by my blazer, and pulls me into the office and says, congratulations, you just made VP. Now, this is a man who would belittle people in front of others. And his name was Dick, I'll just say that. I to this day remember that man. And when my mentor said, what did you learn from him? What I learned was I remembered what he did by yelling at people, screaming at them in front of others. I felt horrible and my confidence was shot. I lived in Orange County, California, and drove 65 miles to downtown San Diego to my office every day and back. And I would cry the whole way because that shattered my confidence and I started to doubt myself. I eventually fought back and literally did something I would never recommend you do. But he impacted on my performance. And I always remembered how I felt. And what I want to say to you, the lesson I've learned is, if that's how you felt and it impacted on your performance, why would you pass that feeling on to anybody else? And so Maya Angelou said, if I've learned anything, I've learned that people forget what you said, people will forget what you do, but they will never forget how you made them feel, how you made them feel. And so I want you to think about this. The greatness of leadership is about sustaining and achieving extraordinary outcomes, leveraging your greatness while you engage the greatness in others, right? It's about this individual who had that terrible habit of belittling people. Eventually what we discovered is that he had a very high, big ego with a very low self-esteem. And the only way he felt good was making others feel bad. So you want to use the greatness in you to drive and sustain extraordinary results while engaging the greatness of others. And so I want you to remember, I want you to lead with your, make business management decisions with your brain, your head. I want you to make people decisions with your heart. And again, I want you to have the guts and the courage to be the confident woman leader that you can. And you've got this, girl, right? This is the last, I believe this is maybe the next to the last slide. Strive for excellence, not perfection. I don't want to read all the slides to you. I want you to remember, as women, we need to collaborate and not compete or compare. You can look at another leader and say, I admire this about them, but make it your own. Surround yourself with supporters and people that lift you up. Perform with certainty as if you've got this. Reach your highest dreams and use your head, heart, and guts to lead. So kind of the last thing is, what one thing in the chat box will you do to be a more confident and assertive leader? and I want you to go do it. So I'd like to see some things in the chat box. Actually, what I will do is I will send a PDF version of the slides to Meg, and we will somehow make those available on the site. And this is also available as a recording. So what's one thing you're going to do to be a more confident, assertive, strong leader? I'm going to train myself to stop saying woman leader and just say leader too. We have some time for questions if we'd like, as you're sort of doing your one thing.
Right. I think, Meg, you can come online. Maybe we have a few more minutes to take some questions.
Sure thing. We did get a couple questions from a couple of our users, so I know that they're excited to get their answers. I'm going to lean in to show some empathy.
All right, all right.
We had one user that had a question that I think I've seen a few other people struggle with in maybe like a larger corporate environment. They said, do you have any advice for a woman who has been labeled as aggressive instead of assertive? How do you escape a label? Is the only solution to leave the organization where you've achieved that label? Or is there another way to turn around people's perception of you?
You know, I'm going to go back to the comment made about the courage, guts, and humility. Sometimes, and I'm going to ask also for Chaya's advice as well. I think sometimes it's okay to go back to people and say, I've heard feedback that I've been too aggressive at times, and I'm working on that. And even ask someone, a friend or a colleague or a peer, to maybe be your signal that when maybe you're getting too aggressive, to do the Carol Burnett tug the ear kind of thing. Have somebody be there that kind of can watch you and say, well, what I thought I was being assertive and I was told I was being aggressive. Can you help me? And that alone, that humility, will show that I'm trying to change. And also to check your own self.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Patty. I think there's one more thing. What I used to do is I would advise to have some empathy on the other person. I think it's important to know what the other person is going through, or maybe has some reason why they felt that you are aggressive. It's good to have that conversation and be empathetic with that person. At the same time, I do agree, always have a one-on-one direct conversation. Try to understand what I have said wrong that in fact, that hurt the other person or they felt that way, and try to build that relationship. I think relationships really go a long way. And being empathetic, I always say leadership with empathy. That's the best way to, manage a good team. And that's how people will accept you.
Yeah, and they will follow you. And I definitely agree that that's the perfect advice, is balance. And if you looked earlier, the research shows women with power and empathy rise up the ranks faster.
Right.
Right.
Great.
We also had one more audience member who said that they'd like to work more on their personal unconscious biases. Do you have any pointers, resources, or guidance for where we could go to learn more about those biases and what we could do to avoid or fight them?
There's some really great content up on a number of the websites. One is you can always go to YouTube and search for a number of things on unconscious bias. But also there's things like LinkedIn Learning. There's Udemy, UDEMEY, that offers some very low-cost training online courses you could take. There's a lot of good books on how to recognize your unconscious bias. The first step is simply being aware. And the next step is then obviously taking action to reduce those biases. So hire someone different from you. Who do you go to lunch? Well, doesn't work today. Who do you invite to lunch when you go to lunch? Who do you go to happy hour with? Do you go to people who are different from you, or do you always seem to go out with the same people? It's one of the things I challenge men about. I said, how come you're always taking other guys out to lunch, but you never take a woman out to lunch? Right.
Very true.
And I put up, as we're chatting, I put up the special offer on my book. It's normally $18.95 on Amazon, but if you want to get it today, you can either email me or go to womenkickinglass.com/book. So as we're just sort of talking, so thank you, Meg, for putting those things in. So LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, I think the courses are maybe like between $10 and $30. Lots of books on unconscious bias. Lots of great work by the neuroscience leadership group around the science of the brain. So a lot of good stuff out there.
And one more thing, just from Chitra Durai on our SheTek Power team. She sent in a quick question saying, why don't other women push back when another woman is called aggressive?
Oh,
So she also put in a little comment here too. Question the person who is doing the labeling if they would use another word, if maybe it wasn't a woman that they were labeling there. So maybe that's something. Why don't you think other women push back when another woman is labeled as aggressive? Is there some kind of like in crowd fear there?
I always say I want women to collaborate, don't compete. And I want women to support, not sabotage. So if you're in that meeting and the woman's making a really strong point, you might say something like, I think Meg's got a really great point. I think we need to listen to this or explore this idea more. I want you to support other women in meetings, in situations when those things happen. And I do like the question, if I was doing this and I were a man, would you still say I'm being bossy? Now that obviously takes some guts, some chutzpah.
Yeah. That's the kind of leader that I aspire to be.
Call it.
I agree. I think collaborate, not compete. I think that's the most important thing. Like throughout my career, I have seen many women, they do not really open their mouth, right? When something is going wrong, they either want to be safe, not get involved in that conversation, or they feel that, okay, by me being quiet, I'm probably going to be one step ahead of this woman who is currently in this bad situation. So collaboration versus compete, I think that's definitely is a great point.
And support.
Most of the time we don't support each other, and it's important that we do.
Yeah, a friend wrote a book about what according to men, what do women do wrong when it comes to being a leader? And one of the number one things was they compete versus collaborate. Men compete, and they compete hard against each other, but they also do the high fives and the fist bumps, and they kind of go on without it. We tend to hold on almost like institutional memory. So, and you don't want to be sitting in that meeting thinking, oh, I'm so glad that's not me, and kind of put your head down. You want to say, I think this is inappropriate. And that's the only way we're going to get beyond the biases we're seeing in all areas, women, men, people of color, what school you graduated from, what part of the country you lived in. The only way we're going to get through that is if we're really, really, really willing to step out and call it out.
Yep.
All right, great. Thank you guys so much again for being a part of today's episode of The Outlet. I know that I learned so much from you right now, Pattie, and I really appreciate the way that you can talk about how important that support is and about understanding yourself before we can move forward in our own careers and business, increasing our own confidence for our own success. I wanted to take just a quick moment to invite everyone that's watching us right now to join us over in the SheTek Power community. You'll find us over at shetek.net. Our mission is, again, to increase the number of women in the tech staffing pipeline, and we do that through engaging, empowering, and employing women who are just like you. You can engage with us in our community's active discussion board. We regularly post new topics that discuss things that are relevant to you in your career, like what you just heard today. You can connect with the top women in tech around the country, like Chaya and Pattie, learn from them, and share your learnings with others. The SheTek community even has a revolutionary matchmaking system, which is based on the interests and skills that you put in your own profile, which makes an ideal place to find a mentor or somebody to chat with just about your career. Empower yourself using the SheTek community resources. We offer trainings in top tech skills like Tableau, Salesforce, DevOps, and more to bulk up your skills and increase your resume's power. We can have free downloadable worksheets to help you set effective goals. We'll also make Pattie's deck here available to download there, so that way you can follow up and keep on this track of increasing your confidence, improve body language, the whole deal. Use the SheTek community for the powers and the tools that you need to increase your tech skills. Finally, get employed using the SheTek careers page. We post hot new tech opportunities around New Jersey, New York, and around the rest of the United States. From highly skilled and paid roles to entry-level positions suited for those of us who are just getting started in tech. We've got a position for everybody. Come stop by SheTek Careers and find your next role today. Come join us in our community. You can use that bit.ly link, bit.ly/SheTek Talk, to come find our community discussion board. Or you can come join us at any of our little social media handles you'll see down there. We're pretty much SheTek Global everywhere you'll go find us. Thank you so much for everybody who joined us for this 6th episode of The Outlet, Lunch and Learn with SheTek's Extraordinary Women. And thanks to our guests, true extraordinary women themselves, author, speaker, and trainer coach Pattie Grimm and Chaya Pamula of SheTek and PamTen. Stay plugged into the outlet and join us for a follow-up conversation about leadership and confidence. And follow us again on the social media channels. Talk to you guys soon, and thanks again.
Thank you, Patty. Really appreciate your time and valuable input. Great sharing all that information. Thank you.
Great input from you too. So awesome.
Thanks, Meg.
Thanks, Meg.
Got some great feedback already. Thank you.
Awesome.